Rise and Grind Podcast, episode 13. And we have my dear friend Curtis Valk joining us today. And it's perfect timing with the Medicine Hat Tigers taking down the WHL finals. They won the Western Hockey League Championship this past week. And I was wanting to get Curtis on the pod this whole time, but he's just back home in his off season now, and he was grateful enough to spend an hour with me chatting about his career. And he played for the Medicine Hat Tigers in his junior career. He was the captain for the Tigers and had multiple 90-plus point seasons. And Curtis's journey is really inspiring to me. I was fortunate enough to share the ice with Curtis a few times growing up in midget 15s and a few other years periodically. And when I reflect on Curtis's game, everyone in the community would say, "Oh, he's too small to make it. He's too small. Doesn't weigh enough. He's not growing fast enough." But when I played on the ice with him, he was the most skilled hockey player and the smartest hockey player I had ever seen and shared the ice with in my entire life. And that's not saying much. I certainly didn't play at that high a level for very long, but I could just tell that there was something different about Curtis's game. His IQ was way higher than I could even conceive of having. And he was so skillful on the ice that I knew that if he kept grinding, he could make hockey into whatever career he wanted, and he certainly has done that. And not only did he have a very successful WHL career, he then went on and, you'll hear us talk about his journey through the East Coast Hockey League into the American Hockey League, and then ultimately to playing a game with the Florida Panthers in the NHL. Curtis's professional career has taken him now over to the KHL, which you'll hear about, and the KHL is known as the second best league in the world. So it's basically the NHL of Russia and associated countries over there. And Curtis has been there for quite a long time now, and it's always great when he comes back home for the offseason to catch up with him, play some golf, see how his year's been. And not only did he face adversity early on in his career, saying that he wasn't big enough, going undrafted, but he's had multiple injuries and had to grind through a lot of seasons where if he doesn't perform, he's not going to get that next contract or as good of contract as he can. And he's again and again proven himself to be a world-class hockey player. And that's something I love about this podcast, when we can get to pick the brains and listen and learn from a world-class player or person at whatever their skill set is. I think there's always something to lean off of and pick from these episodes. I know certainly I learned a lot from Curtis, not only through my life, but even in this episode, he said some things that certainly ring true. And I think it's more than, a gentle nudge to just continue to pursue whatever it is that lights you up. Curtis loves hockey, and he's fortunate enough to now make a very good living through playing hockey. But, we could see his end result of him playing right now and be like, oh, he's so lucky, he's so, fortunate to play hockey. Whereas I see a lifelong journey of grinding, a lifelong journey of overcoming obstacles, a lifelong journey and a pursuit and a quest to always get better. And I know that that's going to lead into multiple years of Curtis's career still getting better. I don't think he's slowing down at all. And whatever he decides to do when he's ready to hang up the skates, I know he will be world-class at that as well. So I hope you can pick apart something and learn from this episode. I know I certainly did. Certainly appreciate Curtis's time. So without further ado, Curtis Valk, hope you enjoy. All right, we are here with my good friend Curtis Valk. Curtis, thanks for your time, man. I know you're on the deck of your beautiful home here in Medicine Hat, and I really appreciate your time. Bring the listener up to speed, kind of how your year has been. I know you were kind of battling some knee stuff, but bring the listener up to speed. What's going on in Curtis Valk's life right now?
Thanks for having me, Ryan. Not a whole lot right now, as it's the off season, but this year was a little bit more difficult than most years. I broke my thumb about 10 games into the year, missed about a month of time for that, and then came back for 4 games, and I tore my MCL. I ended up trying to rehab it, came back, played about 3 games, and I ended up getting surgery on it. So I missed the majority of this season. I played 17 of the 68 games, and right now just working in the gym to try to get that recovery back up. the rehab, stuff like that, get ready for next season.
So tell the listener then, just to bring them kind of full circle on what a calendar year looks like for you. Because I know in the KHL, their season's a bit different than what we're used to over here. What's kind of like a calendar year? You're obviously off season now. When do you go back to Russia? What does that season look like? What does the kind of pre-season look like? Because I know that's a little different too.
Yeah, so I head back. Usually, I think we have to be there August 1st. So right at the end of July, I go back a couple days before August 1st. Then we have training camp for about a month. So the season starts around the 1st or the 2nd of September, usually. And then it goes until March 1st. But this past year, they extended it because Russia's no longer in the World Championships at this time. So they extended it, and playoffs started the 22nd of March this year. And then as far as that goes, each playoff round's 2 weeks, games every other day, and depends how far you go. So you could go right until the end of May, just depending on how the team does.
Gotcha. And I know we've had a few talks, and you briefly told me this before, but the preseason lead-up is quite strenuous, isn't it? Can you dive into kind of what that looks like? Because that's a long time to keep going before the season even starts.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, we showed up this year, and this was the first year that they had, I guess, the shortened preseason, which was only a month. Usually guys are there like the 10th of July or something like that. So I remember our coach was saying, like, oh, we got to make sure we're focused. We only have a month to get ready. But in my mind, it's ridiculous compared to the NHL where you show up and, you got like a week of camp and then you're right into preseason games. But, this past year is probably 2 weeks of 3 times a day, whether it's in the morning is usually skate, and then a workout, and then afternoon is either like off ice training or we'll go back on the ice for a couple weeks, and then we play a couple weeks of preseason games. I think we still ended up playing like 6 or 7 preseason games in that amount of time, so there's plenty of time to get ready. And then season starts start of September.
Does that, do you give yourself a bit more lax when you're back home in Medicine Hat, knowing that you have a full month to kind of ramp up the body and conditioning?
Yeah, a lot of guys do.
Yeah.
For me, this year is kind of a big year coming off a major injury like that. So this year I'm going to try to make sure I'm ready to go right at the beginning. But I know guys on my team, some of the import guys, that don't even take their skates home. And they just come back and lace them back up day one of camp and, try to get ready for the season that way. Everybody's a little bit different. I notice as you get a little bit older, it takes a little bit more to get back into it. You're not as quick as you used to be. The body doesn't recover as fast. So if I show up at training camp and I haven't done much, I'm in a world of hurt that first week anyways with the 3 times a day training.
No doubt. Well, I want to rewind the clock a little bit. Especially, it's good time with the Tigers just winning the WHL. There, you're former Medicine Hat Tiger. You're the former captain as well. I'm just looking at your hockey stats here. So you would have played for the Tigers, kind of 2010ish to 2013-14. When you reflect on those days, Curtis, and your career in the WHL with the Tigers, what comes front of mind for you? What are some of those memories that you hold on to?
That time of life is honestly one of the best times of life, I think, as a young hockey player. Playing on that team, you don't realize it at the time, but everybody's the same age, especially once you're done school too. You don't have anything on your plate. You're just going to the rink, playing hockey every day. You get to play in front of thousands of fans in the arena. Medicine Hat was great that way. The fans were good. The guys loved being here. I have a lot of teammates from that time that, really enjoyed their time here in the Hat. And I think just like you don't realize it as much as at that time as when you're older. Like when you turn pro, you got guys of all ages. I think my first year I was 21 and I had a 40-year-old on my team with 3 kids. So you don't realize it at the time, but everybody's your good friend. And it's so much fun. And looking back on that, that's kind of what I miss the most about it. It's just that group of guys that you had and not a worry in the world but to play hockey.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny hindsight, right? It's like you kind of wish you enjoyed it more. At least that's how I feel looking back. Like at university days, I'm like, shit, like the stuff that I complained about, I would laugh about now. And yeah, it's such a different time in life. Now, when you were on the Tigers there, can you talk me through kind of your your ascension from whether it be midget AAA. I know I shared the ice with you playing midget 15s. Were you kind of always on trajectory to play with the Tigers, or what was that like making that step to the W?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was always on the trajectory to play, but so I went to camp my first year at 15 with the Tigers. I was really small at that point. I think I clocked in at main camp, I think, at 112 pounds. So I was pretty little. And I went to camp there. Actually, making main camp out of rookie camp was a big surprise. I wasn't expecting that. I got to stick around a little bit longer with the team. I didn't play any preseason games or anything like that, but I got to practice with some of the veteran guys, and then I got sent down to midget, and I played. I went to camp there, and I ended up getting cut from the AAA team, which I was extremely upset about at the time. But it's part of it that
Sure.
that part of the game is you're not always going to fit the coach's eye, and they're not always going to love the style of game you play. But I was very small, so I played midget 15s that year, and I actually got listed by the Tigers, so they protected my rights shortly after camp. So that definitely helped me in a sense. And then I went to camp next year at 16. Again, in my mind, I thought I was making the team, no problem, but that's just being a little bit overconfident, I think, at times. And I actually made the team out of camp. I played the first game of the season, and then I got sent down after that. And then I went back to midget again. I only ended up playing 4 games at 16-year-old year, and then I made it full-time as a 17-year-old player. And then, I played from 17 till 20.
Nice. So that exposure, even in those couple games in your first year there, did you like identify like, holy smokes, like these guys are way faster, or I have a gap in my skill set? Did you like proactively work on anything through those midget years to help blend that skill gap?
Yeah, I think that 15-year-old year, that first year when I got cut from the midget AAA team, I decided that I was going to prove some people wrong. And just from being in camp just that short amount of time, like I learned how the pace of practice and how everything worked, how sharp you had to be, and I tried to take that to my game in midget, and I really tried to up that side of it. And then I think just as you go, you kind of grow into it. I was quick, but I was never the fastest. And I remember even when at 15 and 16, Willie Desjardins was the coach, and he was telling me how I just need to play fast all the time. And then even just in practice, make the most of the opportunities, whether it be, you're doing a 2-on-1 in practice, and some people just kind of go through the motions. And he would tell me, like, you have to score every time as a small guy. Like, it's not an option. And then, so you just take those habits down to practice, and it kind of builds your game. And it seemed to work out for me anyways.
Gotcha. Now, through your career with the Tigers there, did you always have that chip on the shoulder, number one, and then number two, were you always looking at like what is the next level, or were you so focused on like that specific season, that upcoming game, that you were just kind of all in on that couple day span? What was your strategy kind of moving through your years with the Tigers? Because your stats did get significantly better every single year that you played with them, right?
Yeah, that first year was actually a shock too. It's the first time you go from being kind of the top guy in the team, playing all the games, playing all the minutes, to my first year I got scratched, I think like
Sure.
three or four of the first 8 games. And I remember going in to talk to the coach, and he basically just said, like, what makes you better than anyone else? Like, you need to prove it that you deserve to play over other guys, because same thing, we're all trying to make our name in the league. And that first year was a bit of a struggle and a little bit of a eye-opening situation where you're not just going to be given things. And I really had to learn how to play the way the coach wanted me to play. I kind of shifted my game a little bit from a scoring guy. That first year I played 4th line and not a lot of minutes in a game, so it's a different mindset. I got better at it as the year went on, and I think by the end of the year I played pretty much every game. I wasn't in and out anymore. And then that next year, I wasn't so far like looking so far ahead, but it was just that goal to be the best player that you could be each night, try to be productive. And I think that was kind of the easiest thing. Well, made it easier. If you're worried about like kind of the year-end totals or something like that, it's going to be tough. You have a goal in mind of what you want to accomplish.
Sure.
I remember when I was 20, I wrote down I had a little whiteboard in my room. I wrote the number 50 on it. And every game I scored, I would drop it down 49, 48, 47. And that was kind of something that, every day I saw it. And I wanted to score 50 goals in the league. That was a big goal of mine. And it just, just reminded me that every game was an opportunity to do that. And I think that really helped. I think both my 19 and 20-year-old year, I think I was 3 goals short and 4 goals short.
Yeah.
I didn't quite make it, but something like that I think helped a lot, just to stay in the moment too, and remind you how important each game is, that like you don't have, unlimited opportunities to do this. So
Sure, yeah. That's really cool to hear, because like just something visual daily that it's like a gentle nudge or a gentle reminder, right? Because I don't know how many games, I think 72 games is WHL season, is that what it was? Yeah, like that's a long season, and I'm sure there's a lot of weeks there where it's kind of mundane. You're playing weekday games away, and it's like, holy smokes, that could wear on a guy, but having that daily reminder probably did help that for sure, right?
Yeah, that was, like you said, it does get long. But at the same time, you're young and you enjoy hockey so much, right? Like, I feel like back then I didn't think of it as a long thing, but now, we play 68 games in the KHL, and sometimes there's those times, I'm 32 years old now. It's a little different mindset than when you're in junior.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's transition from your Tigers days, and then walk me through kind of that transition from the dub into more professional hockey, where it is your identity. Like, what did that year look like in terms of, getting committed to a franchise, and then also making another jump from the dub to whether it be the AHL or ECHL at that time?
Yeah, so that first year out of junior, I didn't have a contract. I went to camp with kind of no backup plan. I went to development camp with Vancouver that year, and then I went to their preseason rookie tournament, and I made a main camp out of that camp there. And then I went through main camp, and I got sent down to the American League, which was in Utica, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And going through camp there, they ended up signing me to a 1-year contract, which was not an NHL deal, but just an American League East Coast deal. And not long after signing it, I got sent down to the East Coast. And at the time, Utica had a really strong team. I think they ended up going to the finals that year in the American League. But I went down, and again, it's that same thing. Like, you think you deserve to be there. And I was a little bit choked that I got sent down. But at the same time, like, I wanted to do this as a living, so I tried to just make the most of that opportunity, and I played until January in the East Coast League, and then I tore my ACL. So that ended my first year, and then I actually didn't have a contract at the time, but I had good enough stats in that first bit that they're willing to sign me again, and I ended up signing a 2-year deal.
Nice.
With them. Gave me a little bit of like leeway coming off the injury the next year. Yeah, so it was a tough situation because it's your first year pro and you want to, again, climb that ladder quick. But now I have an injury and I ended up missing 11 months with that. So I missed a ton of time, and I came back in the East Coast League. And then by the end of that season, I got called up to the American League. I played about the last month with the American League team. And then the next year I made Utica out of camp, and I played there for a full season. And then on to Springfield the next year. But it's definitely an adjustment from junior hockey. You're playing men now. Like, yeah. It's different. Like a big 20-year-old kid, even if they are 200 pounds or whatever they are, it's different than playing 35-year-old men that have they're strong.
They're seasoned, right?
They're seasoned. They understand their bodies. They know, it was a big difference, but at the same time, I just went in and tried to enjoy myself, and I love playing the game. So you adapt fairly quickly. You understand what works and what doesn't work, and then you go from there.
When you get into an environment like in Utica, for example, is that locker room welcoming to a young gun like yourself that's trying to come in, trying to make a name, trying to get a contract? Like, for those seasoned guys, are they inviting, or did you have anyone kind of take you under their wing at the time?
Yeah, so I was lucky when I went to Utica. Wasey Hamilton was there, and he was my captain when I was 17 with the Tigers. And I knew some of the other young guys too, because you go through camps with these guys, so you've seen them around for a couple years now. And actually, that team in Utica was awesome. They had such a good group of leaders that everybody felt a part of that team, and that also made it very easy. It was a little different than when I went to Springfield. the team was a lot younger. And me being, I think I was 24 at the time, I was one of the older guys. And we were all kind of fighting for those spots to get called up. And it was definitely a different dynamic than when we had in Utica, where it wasn't so much like you're playing against each other on the same team. We were a team, and guys were close and they were excited when other guys did well. It shifted a little bit when I went to Springfield.
That's interesting, hey, because I'd imagine the majority of players are trying to get that call up, right? And the majority of players are probably trying to not be better than their teammates, but I'd imagine there's some inter-competition there for sure, right?
For sure. I mean, other than a select few of the veteran guys that kind of knew that they were going to be American leaguers.
Sure.
At that point in their career, everybody wanted to get called up. So you're competing daily with the guy next to you, but then you're also competing alongside them in the games, right? So it's a weird thing, yeah. Like some guys are better about it than others, but yeah, you compete, and it's good in a sense because it propels you to be better, right? Like there's no days off then. If you want to make that next step, like you have to be better than the guy next to you, and that helps in a lot of ways to kind of keep you on that path. But again, it can cause some issues too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's jump into kind of Springfield and your time there. Do you remember, kind of walk me through that day when you did get the call that you're gonna go play a game in the NHL? When you reflect on that, what kind of comes front of mind for you?
Honestly, it's probably one of the coolest experiences you can have as a hockey player. That was your goal your whole life, right? Like you grew up playing hockey to, you watched the NHL, you knew all the players, like that's that end goal. And I remember, I think it was about 15 games into the season or so, and the coach called me in after a game, and he said, hey, you're going to go up. They're playing at home on Tuesday. It must have been like a Saturday night or something. He's like, you're going to go up on Tuesday. They're playing Dallas. You're going to be in the lineup. And like, that's just, it's a feeling like no other. Like, you just can't explain it. Like, your whole life, you've been working towards that, and then you get that call. It was such a cool feeling. I remember I went right away. I can still remember in like, kind of just the backside of our locker room in Springfield, we had like some like dry stalls where you could put your clothes and stuff like that, and grabbing my phone and calling my parents. And
That's so cool.
Yeah, I called my mom. I think my dad wasn't picking up, and then I was like, can you get dad? Like, I got some news. And then just letting them know that, yeah, Tuesday I'm going to play my first NHL game. And then it was honestly probably the coolest phone call you can make as a kid. And actually, my parents and both my sisters and my brother flew out to Florida for that first game. I didn't play a whole lot, but it was still a very cool experience and something that I'll never forget.
No doubt. I remember having all the guys over at my place and watching the game there, and that was so cool to see you ascend and being your friend and being friends with a lot of other guys like in our circle. Just knowing the adversity that you went through to get to that point was really cool to watch. I wanna hop into kind of when you got to Florida there for the game. Did you even know where to go, what to do, who to talk to? Like, because when I think of that, I'm like, that must be so overwhelming. You're excited, there's a lot of emotion, but you still need to perform. You still need to make the most of your opportunity. How did you go through those few days?
Yeah, it's definitely intimidating. First of all, you're walking into a team that, close-knit guys. Yeah, there's good guys on there, but you're kind of like that guy that, an outsider, right? So you're in there for the first time. I remember when I landed, they got me a car at the airport, so then I drove to the hotel, and then we had a couple days of practice, and we were at the practice rink for that. But same thing, it's like you pull up there, it's like, where do I go? Yeah. Where do I take my equipment? Like, who do I talk to first? When you get in the rink, obviously the staff and stuff comes and like talks with you and kind of gets you situated. Florida had a pretty good group at that time. They had, my roommate at the time was actually called up too, so that helped.
Nice.
He kind of could show me around, but at the same time, we're both like the young guy, right? So like, again, like you're taking somebody's job being there. So there are people that are excited for you to be there, but then there are guys that are not so excited. So you feel like an outsider for sure. I remember my first day there, I was sitting in like the trainer's room or something, and Keith Yandel comes in, and he's, a big veteran, funny guy, like been around the league a long time, and he looks over at me and he goes, Valky. He goes like, what are those shoes? Did you walk here from Springfield? And like just something that like didn't even cross my mind at the time. Like I looked down, I'm wearing these white Converse shoes that are pretty much brown from like just wearing them so often. But this never crossed my mind to maybe put on like a nice new pair of shoes going in the locker room. So then like that kind of breaks the ice and lets you know you're part of the team and guys are gonna give you the gears a little bit. So
Sure.
no, that was cool. And then yeah, it's the same thing, just even pulling up to the game for game time, right? Like your whole routine, like you want to do as much of it as you can, but you also don't want to be in the way of somebody else's or something like that. And I think looking back on it, I wish I would have been a little bit more confident in myself and like had a little bit more swagger and just kind of, did me. And like then that carries onto the ice. And like kind of at the time, though, you don't know, like that ended up being my one shot.
Sure. Yeah.
So you don't know that. You think like you're kind of going to get more opportunity build into it, but it ended up being my one game, and I wish I would have just left it all out there, like, and just if I made a mistake or I got scored on, whatever, right, like at least you did it your best. But there's no like major regrets. It's just something you kind of look back on.
Yeah. Again, probably weird dynamic because not only are you taking someone's spot, I'd imagine when new blood comes into the locker room, the guys that are kind of on the cusp or maybe a contract year, they're probably like, hey, is this the guy that's going to bump me out of the franchise too, or whatever the case is. Now, did you see a big skill gap in the NHL, even your exposure in those practices from what you were used to? Was there any, faster pace, or what kind of came front of mind when you were in that game playing the shifts?
I think it's a little bit faster for sure. I think everything's just sharper. There's less mistakes, so that just speeds up the game in itself, right? Like guys hit the tape, guys, when you're going through a hole in the ice and like you're open for that split second, the puck's on your stick. Where as you move down the levels, maybe guys don't have that same vision. They don't have that. So it's not necessarily like if you took an American League team and you lined them up on the goal line and you raced them against NHL guys. Like, yeah, there's going to be a few guys that are quicker, but like it's pretty much the same, right? Like you can only skate so fast. It's just like the speed of like the decisions that guys make and how like good they are with the puck. There's a difference there. And then I think that top line in the NHL is just next level. You look at any team, like those guys are unbelievable. Like at the time there's Barkov was on the team, and like there's definitely a gap in skill and ability between them and fourth liners, right?
Sure.
Like those top end scoring guys, they just have something, a little bit different than the rest of the guys.
It's tough to even, just like high end in any sports, it's tough to put into words. There's a lot of intangibles involved, and there's a lot of instinct. There's a lot of, things that you can't really point to, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So it's
not necessarily like size or strength or speed or anything like that, but it's like their ability to put it all together, and that's what makes them so good.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I remember vividly watching that game. We were so pumped. Did you get any like welcoming other than Yandel there? Were any other guys, did you get any acknowledgement from the guys like, hey, rookie, or like, hey, good job? Or was there any moments that were super unexpected where you're like, that was pretty cool?
I wouldn't say like any super unexpected ones, but guys were good. They were, they knew that it was my first time up, and they were good with that. Actually, after that first game, I went on the road with the team out west. So I flew with the team we landed in San Jose first, and Barkov took me out for dinner with a couple other guys. So
that's cool.
That's kind of cool too. You didn't have to do that. Him and a couple of the other veteran guys, and they just chatted, and it was cool to do that. And then so that would probably be one of the experiences, I guess. But no, it wasn't like, I don't know. I think maybe it'd be different if you're like a top pick or something like that. They really try to make it special. But I was just a signed guy, undrafted, already played pro a few years, just kind of, I'm not that like high profile player coming in. So I think it's different depending on who you are.
Sure. Now, your transition to playing in the KHL, was there a few options on the table for you, like before you kind of made that decision to move to the KHL? Can you walk me through that process, if there was a process, or did you have to weigh some pros and cons of where your career was headed? Because in my mind, and I could be wrong here, but that's kind of a fork in the road. You either go this way or that way.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly what happened. So at the time, I was restricted by Florida, which meant that I could only accept contract offers from them. So unless you're a superstar, they kind of have you, right where they want you.
Sure.
Like So I got an offer from them, and I thought I was extremely underpaid for the season that I had previously. So at that same time, I got an offer in Russia. Actually, Kazakhstan was a team. Barys is the team name, and I got an offer to go there. And it was a pretty heavy pay difference. So at the time, we were trying to work out a deal. I remember it was right after the season. I flew down actually to watch my brother play golf in Texas. So I'm walking on the course and I'm getting calls from my agent. Like, we're going back and forth with negotiations, trying to get more out of Florida, because ultimately I wanted to stay in North America.
Sure.
We're trying to get more money. And then there was actually a possible trade back to Vancouver where they were going to send somebody else to Florida, and then I would have gotten the money that I wanted to. They were willing to pay that. But at that same time, I'm getting pressure from the Russian contract that, like, hey, you got till the end of the week to sign this.
Yikes.
And at that time, it's a big step. Like, you go from playing North America, where that's your dream, you want to play in the NHL, and I wanted to prove myself more, right? Like, I only got that one game. But then it's also, at the same time, it's a business. You can't play forever. So I wanted to also make as much money as I could while playing. And at the time, I thought, hey, if I go to Russia, I can play there 1 year. If I come back, I'll be unrestricted. And then, things will change. So it kind of came down to that. I gave, Florida kind of an ultimatum, like, I want this. If you don't match it, I'm leaving. And I think they kind of thought I was bluffing, maybe. Sure. So I ended up going. And it probably ended November. They ended up coming back to me with, on probably, 30% more than what I originally asked for. Wow. 30 to 50% more, trying to get me to come back. At that point, though, I wasn't going to leave my contract in Russia.
So this was after you had signed?
Yeah, I've already played. Yeah. They're in November, and they kind of had a bunch of injuries that year, and they ended up getting a new coach, and they must have needed some guys, and they kind of knew my game, and the coach in the American League at the time really liked the way I played. So they ended up offering me a contract to come back, and I turned that down, and then that's the last I've kind of talked with North American teams. I've been over there ever since.
Wow. So at that time then, and I'm super curious about this, when you have an agent, is he proactively seeking out opportunities in the KHL, or was Kazakhstan the one that kind of came to your doorstep?
So when I told my agent about it, we weren't looking, but at the time, our close friend Darren Dietz was playing on this team.
Gotcha.
And at the same time, he's telling me, hey, you should come play here. I really enjoy it. Pretty cool experience. So that's kind of what brought me to there. I wasn't going to go, I don't think, to any other team. There was a couple other teams that might have been interested, but at the time, I just, for the sake of moving across the world to go play with a childhood friend, is pretty cool experience. So that would have made it a lot easier. And that's kind of why I decided to go there. But yeah, how it works, if you wanted to, you could tell your agent, Christmas time, hey, next year I'm looking to go, play in a different league, see what's out there for me. And they'll go call around, see who's looking for players and what type of player, and yeah, hopefully they can find you a spot.
That's cool. So they're the one that they can source out opportunities for you if
yeah.
that's what you want. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's different than North America, where you can only negotiate at certain times, right? So the European leagues and the Russian leagues, you can sign a deal for the next year mid-season with a new team. So it is very crazy. I've even heard of guys in some of the European leagues, they've signed a 2-year deal 2 years from now.
Really?
Future contracts with teams. So, that's crazy to me too. But it's crazy enough in Russia, when you're in a contract year and it comes around December, January, and teams are calling you, but you're also still playing for your team, and you're trying to negotiate with everybody, but it's kind of awkward at the rink a little bit. You're walking by, your coach is asking, if they want you back anyways, it's hey, what are you thinking? You coming back? And you don't want to be right to their face, hey, I'm leaving or going somewhere else, right? It's a unique situation.
No doubt, because ultimately your time on ice is kind of still in their hands too, right?
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Gosh, that's crazy. So you make the jump, you move across the world. Darren's over there with you, which I'd imagine makes that move a little bit easier. Talk to me about the style of hockey that's played over there. I know I've talked to your brother lots that watches all your games, and he says he falls asleep in half of them. Just means it is a different pace. As a player, what was the transition there when you're starting to play games over there?
So the first year I went over, they were still Olympic ice. for most of the arenas. So when we
Gotcha.
get there, that's just different in itself. The ice is so big that you can't play that North American style where you're aggressive and running at guys because it's so big they just pass it away. So I remember it was crazy to me, like first game where you go out there and you have literally of the 10 guys on the ice, 9 of them change at one time. There's a D-man held the puck behind the net and everybody else, right, went off the ice. And it was like just a wholesale line change, like which you would never see
Never see it.
American hockey. So it was a lot more defensive in a way. Like you would play, my first couple years too, we played like this 1-3-1 system, and we were basically trying to win a game 2-1. Score, and 2 of our goals were supposed to come on the power play. So like it wasn't exciting by any means. I think we had like 10 games of like 12 that went to overtime in a stretch. So pretty crazy. Now all the new rinks are moving to NHL size. So the game is getting quicker, but a lot of it is defensive hockey. And not only is it defensive, but the level it's not as good as the NHL. Like they're still very good players, but because you don't have those top end guys, when you play defensive hockey, it works honestly better. Sometimes like if you try to play super defensive against like a very skilled team, they have the puck the whole game, they just like kind of walk right through you type of deal. Where like you get away with it a little bit more in Russia, so that'd probably be why my brother says he's fallen asleep. Some of the games are boring, and I mean our team specifically, we play more of a defensive style, so it works. We win games, but again, we win games 2-1.
That's crazy.
Completely different. Like we watch NHL highlights, and it's like every second game somebody scored 10 goals.
Sure, it's 7-4 or something like that, right?
Yeah. And guys are it's complete opposite in Russia.
Let's get into the lifestyle of moving over there a little bit. Number one is kind of the language. How did you overcome that? And then how did you get around? Like, did they put you up in an apartment? What was your living accommodations like?
So the first year I went, the team had an apartment, so they paid like a portion of our apartment. And then if you wanted something nicer, you had to pay out of pocket. And then that year too, guys had drivers. So you would essentially pay this guy to be on call 24/7 for you. So he would drive, to the rink, back from the rink, anywhere you want to go for dinner. If you want to get groceries, when you land at 2 a.m, he's waiting at the airport. Kind of a unique thing coming from Canada, where like that's not
a thing.
That's not a thing. So unless you're like, crazy wealthy, like, so that was unique. But the apartment was really nice. When I was in Astana, Kazakhstan, they had like a big like apartment kind of complex thing, but there's probably like 8 or 10 buildings and like massive high rises, right?
Sure.
And in that area there was grocery stores, barber shop, restaurants, and all the import guys lived in those buildings. So it was like very close, which was nice. Now that we're in a different city, it's a little bit different, but same thing. A lot of the import guys stay in the same building as me, or same area anyways. And then as far as the language went, it was definitely a shock outside of the rink. But at the rink, it was okay. That first year, I think we had 10 import players, or 10 guys that either European or North American. So that's half the team almost is speaking English. And then we have a translator that would translate all the coaches' meetings. So even though I didn't know anything, like Russian-wise, like I still got by pretty easily. A funny story about the language is I was playing a game and we just got scored on, and it was my guy that kind of squeaked by me on the wall, and I should have been on the other side of him. Anyways, it's in the net, and our coach calls a timeout. And he's yelling, and then I hear Curtis, and then I hear Blet, Stoti Dilish. And at the time, I hear my name, and I'm like nodding, like, yeah, I should have had that guy. But so this whole timeout, apparently, this guy's just ripping me. But I have no idea. I'm looking around in the stands because I don't understand anything. And then we go in the intermission and we go in the dressing room, and he pulls out on the video screen and he shows it again in front of everybody, and he's screaming at me again. I'm just like, yeah, like next time I'll be better. And then I go back out, and then we're leaving the game, and Darren goes to me, he's like, and he understood some more Russian at this point. He goes, pretty good at you to not let that rattle you. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, he told you to take your gear off in the intermission. like to not come back out. Meanwhile, there's me. I'm walking back out. I'm fist bumping the coach. It like everything's all good. Like it was just right over my head, which was kind of nice that first year. Like meetings, anything like good meeting or bad meeting, I didn't know. So
That's
like just getting
man.
yelled at, but it didn't matter.
I'd imagine that coach is probably like, this guy has so much confidence. Holy smokes!
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome. I'd imagine there's lots of stories like that over there. I mean, it's totally different culture, different hockey, different
Yeah.
lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Now, how many years did you play in Kazakhstan before you signed with a different team?
I was there 4 seasons, and then now I've been in this with this new team for 3 years. So I've
Gotcha.
been over there for 7. Going back next season, I got a year on my deal. So at least 8, and then we'll see from there.
Now, at your age, like hockey years, you're getting up there a bit. Is it normal to still get 2-year deals at this time? Is that kind of the goal, is to get 2 at a time and then eventually just 1-year contracts? Or people in your shoes that have played over there, what's a trajectory for the next 6, 7, 8 years for you?
Yeah, you're definitely getting a little bit older, being 32. For me, this past deal was a 2-year contract. It was nice. Well, my last 2 actually were nice. It just gives you a little bit more stability. At the same time, in
Sure.
Russia, you can. It's not the same as North America. You can be fired,
Mm.
and then you're done.
Yeah.
So it's not like North America where they have to buy you out and they like have to like they technically have to buy you out in Russia, but it's not the same as North America. But yeah, as you get older, like depends on the organization, honestly. Like some will give you like a couple year deal, 2-year deal, and then there's others that just go 1 year.
Gotcha.
For me, this is a really big season, just coming off injury and being a little bit older. So hopefully get out to a good start and like play well, and then you kind of have that bargaining chip on your side. Now, if you're still valuable, teams and they like you, 2-year contracts are possible. Yeah, and then but at the same time, there's guys too that I played with that aren't sure what they want to do, say with their family wise or where they want to be, where they just sign 1-year contracts, and it's more of like a player's
Interesting.
choice because it's a big lifestyle change for a lot of guys, right? You got families, there's a lot to consider when you're moving all the way across there and like putting kids in school, stuff like that. So
No doubt. No
yeah, it
doubt.
just depends on the personal situation.
Because you're essentially living over there a lot more than you would be back in North America, right? With the
Yeah,
season.
so yeah, if I'm gone August and if you run until May, right, you're 10 months of the year. So like 8 to 10 months every year. I spend more time in Russia each year than I do in Canada.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt, but at your age, or players like around your age that are looking at, you're bringing a spouse over, you're bringing family over. I'd imagine the city that you end up in is very, very important in that decision making, right?
Yeah, that's huge, especially in Russia. Not all cities are equal,
Yeah.
more so maybe than certain European places. So for me, like I really enjoy the city that we're in now. We have a good apartment set up. Our team just built a new arena. My
Nice.
wife is very comfortable there. She has local friends that aren't even just with the team, like other wives. Like she's met some local friends. So that as a player, like all those, you consider all those things, right?
Sure.
Like if your family's not happy, then it makes being over there not worth it, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it definitely factors in for sure.
That's really cool. I want to shift gears now, kind of back to Medicine Hat. I have a couple questions just to pick your brain about, but if there's someone that is very much pro Medicine Hat, born and raised, you live here currently, what's your attraction to Medicine Hat? Not just family. I know your family's here, but what makes you want to stay in Medicine Hat, and also with your real estate, I know you got some rentals. What makes you always kind of come home here?
Well, you said it, like family's obviously a big part of it, but I'm very comfortable in Medicine. I love the size of the city. Like it's not crazy big. We live in a big city in Russia. It takes time to get around, where here you can get around in 15 minutes. Another part of it is, for me, I like to golf. We got a great golf community here at a reasonable price. Like golf is an expensive sport, and in a lot of major cities, like it's crazy the amount of money you can spend to play golf. Yeah, and then friends as well. Like I noticed just being away kind of my whole career that you really start to appreciate the friendships and stuff that you have with the people, that you grew up with. Like I'm close with some teammates, but it's not always the same, right? Like it's
Sure.
not that same bond that you have with a lot of people. So coming back to Medicine Hat is just so comfortable for me. I think we'll still travel a lot when we do end up finishing playing, but at the same time, I love being here. My family's here, my wife's family's here, so
Yeah, it's.
yeah.
I feel the same, and I laugh when people complain about traveling to Walmart across town, and I'm like, you have no idea, right? Like,
Yeah.
and same with golf. We're so blessed to have a lot of good courses, a reasonable price point. You can get tee times within reason. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of really good things about Medicine Hat. Talk to me about your rental strategy. Like, do you have a strategy? Do you just like the investment? Like, talk to me through that, because I'd imagine there's a lot of avenues that you could put your money, but you do, I know, choose real estate as one of your major silos of investing.
Yeah, it started kind of with my first property, right? Like I built that duplex and a friend of ours had the other side and I had mine. And then just as I started to play, I started to build my house. And then I kept that original duplex and I rented it out. And just like, I just saw the benefit of having those rentals and them paying for themselves. So it also helps my dad is a builder here in town. So we've built two other duplexes. Well, he's built for me. And the benefit of that, I think, is just them being new. They're so low maintenance for the most part. Like I don't have a lot of headaches coming from those buildings. The biggest thing is just, dealing with tenants that move in and move out. But I know for you too, like you've done some renos on places and like it can be a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
I have my 5-suite apartment too that, we're doing some renos on now, and it's a lot of work on those older buildings and the upkeep and stuff like that. And that was the benefit of building new.
Yeah.
I like real estate in the sense that like you have a tangible thing, and in Medicine Hat it's not wild in the sense where you're going to expect it to drop. Ours maybe doesn't grow as big as some of those major cities, but like it's also not going to crash like those other cities too. So, I have these properties that, I'll always have, and I've been lucky enough to have tenants in there that'll, are paying them off for me, which is obviously a huge benefit of real estate.
Yeah, it's a good strategy because, you're not really relying on that asset to produce a bunch of cash flow, but with a nicer, newer duplex, you do attract a really good quality tenant too that's going to take care of the place most times. So it's like, hey, you got a good tenant that's paying down, your debt on that place and less headaches, right? So it's a pretty good strategy as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we've been very lucky too. We've had really good tenants in all our spots. So that's, very nice. Same thing for me too. A newer property, like you said, you're not going to make those margins. But right now, me playing hockey, I don't need that kind of income. It's more of when I retire, you can benefit from that income rather than now. For me, that's why it makes sense. I can do it. Again, my dad builds them, so it gives him some work. Just get a little bit back in the
Keeps him
inheritance.
busy.
But yeah, keeps him busy too. So yeah.
Now, when you look down the road, Kurt, do you have an age in mind you want to play hockey until, or when you kind of let your mind wander, where does it wander to other than playing high level amateur golf after you're done playing hockey?
Yeah, I think this year showed me a lot about my career. Being hurt so much, it kind of gave me that second wind that I was maybe looking for, that drive to like realize how much I missed it when I couldn't play this year. How much fun it really is. And I'm playing a sport for a living, so like I can't complain. And so I know some guys kind of look at it as, oh, you're gone, but it's such cool experiences that I get to experience. It's a life that not a lot of people get to live. And then at the same time, when I move back here, I can have that ordinary or more ordinary life compared to what we live now. So right now, it's hard to put an exact number on it or age based off injury, stuff like that. But if I can stay healthy, I'll try to play as long as I can. It might not necessarily be in Russia, maybe move to Europe and try to play there and experience something different there as well before coming home. But when I started, I said 35 would be a good year, a good age. But now that's coming up quick. So
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. So play as long as I can.
Is there like avenues to other leagues? Is that kind of what you're thinking eventually later in your 30s? There's other leagues that would take you on as a player and not as much travel, I'd imagine, things like that.
Yeah, so I'd say the KHL is probably the toughest league to get into and then to stick.
Yeah.
So the fact that I'm there, I can kind of move to other leagues a little bit easier. And like you said, the travel. So a lot of those European leagues play 52 games instead of 68. You take like Switzerland or Germany, for example, and the longest you're away from home is maybe one night.
Wow.
Where Russia, we can be 6-7 day road trips. And in Russia, like the time zones, right? You can, there's 6 to 8 hours time zone change from like the farthest east team to the farthest west team.
That's crazy.
And you get like crazy flights and stuff like that, whereas like Germany or Swiss, like you ride the bus usually on game day because it's only a couple hours and you're back home that same night. So if you have a family, that's definitely beneficial because it's, more time spent at home with the kids, stuff like that. It's a little bit easier too. Like Europe is just more like North America, right? You can get away with English everywhere. So yeah, that's kind of would be my goal. I'd play in Russia a few more and then try to experience Europe a little bit.
Yeah, nice, man. Well, I really appreciate you sharing all that, because that whole story is, in my opinion, super inspiring, because I know your journey's been faced with a bunch of adversity, a bunch of injury, a bunch of, I'd imagine, some doubts in your mind at times, and just watching you kind of blast through all that, and like you said, play a sport for a living is really, really cool. Anything you want to circle back on, or any closing thoughts from your end, Kurt?
No, I appreciate you bringing me on, and it's fun chatting with you, and yeah, I'm glad I could share a little bit of my story.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. Thanks for your time, Kurt. Appreciate your friendship. All right, we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Talk soon.